time to ask Mack. You've got a question? He's got the answer.
All right, this is the new section of our show, and it's called Ask Mack. So if you want to get involved, take ownership of this show, as I say, every week, this is not my show. This is your show, everybody. So take ownership, get involved. Ask me your questions, send me stuff out. I'll give you my opinion on it. You have an opinion, get it out there. That's what this whole thing is about. So anyway, we got a few questions that were sent to me, and if you want to send your questions, I'll answer it live on the air. You can ask your questions in several ways. Feel free to email us at talk@onthemoveshow.com. You can call in at 619-924-0986. Again, that's 619-924-0986. You can also, ask your questions. You can post them on facebook.com/OnTheMoveShow or tweet us at OnTheMoveShow. And make sure that your tweets include the hashtag AskMack. So anyway, with that said, we have a listener, my good friend Johnny Rocket of the Launchpad. He asks, do you think some people with PTSD cases are faking it? And if so, what percentage do you think is faked, in my humble opinion? So, well, I'm not going to pretend to know statistics in my humble opinion, but what I will do is I'll do research on it. So that's what I did. I researched the situation, and I found out, according to PsychCentral.com, a 1990 law allows the Veterans Benefits Administration to cross-check its rosters with federal tax and security databases to find unemployable veterans who are reporting work-related income. Okay, so they're unemployable, but they have work-related income. So in 2004, this program identified 8,846 such veterans who reported at least $6,000 in earnings, including 289 of them with an income of $50,000 or more. Well, these people are supposed to be unemployable. So how are they making an income? Anyway, out of this, out of the 1.6 million troops who served, we're talking about a known 8,846 problem individuals. So with that number, that's only a 0.55% of people who are faking and have some kind of, still getting income. So who knows how many people are not still working, but, at 0.55%, that's such a small percentage that I think that it's more important that we focus on helping those that have the problems, and less about trying to scrutinize people and make them try to basically feel bad or feel like they're liars, things like that. I think PTSD is a stigma to begin with. A lot of people look at it as a really, really negative thing, and they're afraid to tell people that they have PTSD, especially in the military. Being somebody in the military, I know how it is. When I was in the military, I was specifically told, if it was anything mental health related, it's going to go on your record, and it may or may not affect you in the next promotion. So, even if something as small as if you wanted to go in and get marriage counseling will go on your permanent record in the military. And now they see, this guy, he's got marriage problems. Okay, all right, maybe that will affect you getting a promotion down the line. You don't know. So think how bad PTSD, the stigma of PTSD, is in the military. People are afraid to tell people about it because they're afraid they're either going to get kicked out or they're not going to be able to get promoted. They're afraid it's going to have negative impacts on their career. Not to mention the fact that they're already trying to take away people's rights who have PTSD. So you serve your country, you go overseas, and you fight for your country, and you come back, and now you're having PTSD from it. You've developed PTSD, and now they want to take away your Second Amendment right, your right to bear arms. That right there. Look at it. People are hiding the fact that they have it. People don't want people to know about it because there are consequences. So let's make it easier for them. That's just my opinion. Let's pay the people who have problems. Obviously, if we run across individuals like these 8,846 people who have who are supposed to be unemployable, but yet they're still earning work-related income. Let's investigate it, find out what is the situation here. Should they really be listed as unemployable? Maybe it's just an error, an administrative problem on our side, and they shouldn't be listed as unemployable anymore. Maybe they still have something going on, but there should at least be an investigation on these people. But probably the way that they look at it is that it probably costs more money to investigate all these people than it does to just continue paying them the amount of money per year. I don't know, but this is like how the government works. It's, fraud, waste, and abuse. Then on top of which they have like these little risk assessments where they're like, all right, it's going to cost more money for us to investigate this than it does just to continue paying, so let's just continue paying. And, some of that may be true, but like I said, my whole point is that I don't think that we should focus so much on these fakers. We need to focus on getting people right, making it not so much of a stigma about having PTSD and protecting our veterans. I mean, it's such an important issue. This is something that we can't afford to let our veterans think that we don't have their back on, because I'll tell you, if they even for a second think that they're not going to get support at home, they're not going to tell anyone, and we see that over and over again. People are hiding it. Anyway, we got another question here from a listener. Angie asks. She has a 3-part question, so I'm going to try to answer this, but so some of these are going to be difficult for me because the way that she does it. So first question, she wants to know, what are the 5 best books that I recommend that will give our reader a firm understanding of our country's heritage? Okay, well, this may come as a surprise to you all, but the very first book that I would recommend would be the United States Constitution. Yes, United States Constitution. That, in my opinion, is the most important read that you can possibly have, period, because how can you understand how our country is founded, all of the things behind it, and plus most United States Constitutions comes with the history and creation of the Constitution attached with it if you get the certain books that have that, so you can get a lot of history in the Constitution about the founding. Then I would recommend the Federalist Papers. The Federalist Papers have the arguments from people that were trying to, become a federalist nation, trying to gain more federal power. So the Federalist Papers has that argument. The Anti-Federalist Papers, they have the argument against it, and I would recommend getting that. That's the third book. So that's Constitution 1, Federalist Paper 2, Anti-Federalist Papers 3. And then the fourth book that I would recommend is something that I read not too long ago, and I'm actually still in the process of knocking it all out. But I've read parts of it, and I really have enjoyed what I've read so far. It's Miracles and Massacres by Glenn Beck, and it tells not only the beautiful parts of our history, the parts that we all look at and love to think about, look back fondly on, but it also tells the ugliest sides of our history, like Wounded Knee, where we massacred a ton of unarmed Native Americans. This situation was horrible, and I've actually talked about this in the past when we did This Day in History. So I won't go too far into that, but as far as this, it tells the good things of our history, and it also tells the bad things of our history. And I think it's important that we know about the bad parts of our history so that we don't repeat it. We learn from our mistakes. We don't just gloss over them and assume that we're this, almighty superpower that does no wrong. We are capable of evil, but we need to learn from our mistakes. So with that said, the 5th book that I would recommend reading would be The Liberty Amendments by Mark Levin. And, I've been reading this book and rereading this book. I love this book, by the way. It's rich with history. It's sometimes it may be a little bit hard to read. It's got a lot of very large words. I tend to go by the philosophy of when you're writing something, write on an 8th grade level, because that's what most people read at. But Mr. Levin is a very smart man, and he uses very, very big words. So in my copy of this book are a bunch of underlined words, and then I go look up what the word meant later. But it's a very good book. I like his idea. His main idea is to do a state convention where we can get back to a more constitutional republic. So with that said, I'm actually a big fan of that idea, and I've talked about it in the past. I can continue to talk about it more, but I won't. I'll let you guys read that if you're interested. But just so you guys know, if you are interested in getting a copy of these books, they are on our website, OnTheMoveShow.com. Click the shop link, go to the third link down in the gear store, and the books are in there. So feel free, if you're interested in getting them. I'd highly recommend reading all 5 of those. Great books, especially the Constitution. I'm a big fan of that. Anyway, so Angie also asked us a part 2 of her question. Who are my 3 political figures that I admire the most? She wanted me to give 2 that are still living. So I apologize, Angie. I can't do that part. The 2 that are still living. I've come up with basically the whole concept that no one is perfect. And that's one thing that I've really learned over the last few years. I don't have any more heroes, especially in politics anymore, at all. No one. I always find that my heroes, they turn out to be a bunch of chumps, and so I just stopped looking for people to look up to. Now, the only person I really look up to is myself, is for inspiration, or at history, and I'm not saying that I'm amazing or anything, because I'm not, but I try to be the person that I want to be. That's what I look up to. I look up to the future person that I could be. I don't know if I'll ever be that person, but I try. Maybe one day. I don't know. Anyway, as far as that, I also look at history, and I can give you 3 people throughout history that I look up to. And first of all, the very first person here is Thomas Paine. Thomas Paine, he wrote the book that sparked the American Revolution and Common Sense. And one thing that I actually, I got a quote, I posted this on Facebook not too long ago, so if you're a friend of mine, you would have seen this, but I'm going to read it anyway because I really, really like it. And this is something Thomas Paine wrote in The Crisis. These are the times that try men's souls. The summer soldier and the sunshine patriot will, in this crisis, shrink from service of their country. But he that stands by it now deserves the love and thanks of man and woman. Tyranny, like hell, is not easily conquered. Yet we have this consolation with us, that the harder the conflict, the more glorious the triumph. What we obtain too cheap, we esteem too lightly. It is dearness only that gives everything its value. Heaven knows how to properly put a price upon its goods, and it will be strange indeed if so celestial an article as freedom should not be highly rated. Anyway, isn't that just amazing? Thomas Paine, this man, he literally helped change the hearts and minds of the people who were in the revolutionary days. Back in the day, people were not supporting this. They were steadfastly with the crown. So, with that said, this is important to note that this happened, because this is this is something that people weren't thinking about at the time, as far as trying to be free. The whole concept of self-governance and things like that, it was unheard of. People wouldn't even consider it. But now, thanks to Thomas Paine, he actually helped spark the American Revolution. He changed the hearts and minds. I mean, this is a great thing that happened. And if you haven't read Common Sense, by the way, I'd highly recommend reading that book as well. So anyway, my second favorite person throughout history, the person I look up to, not for everything, obviously, but for specifically a few things. George Washington. He is my favorite politician that has ever lived. And the reason why is because he gave up his power. He could have been king of America. He could have been. In fact, his advisors talked about it briefly, and when they said something about it, George Washington shut them down. He said, never talk about that again. I find this very, very fascinating, the fact that this man, he could have just walked in and been king, and no one would have given a second guess. No one would have thought about it twice. And he said no, he didn't want this kind of power. He's the one that established the whole philosophy of a reluctant politician. Somebody who didn't want to have any kind of power. He did it because he felt called into doing it. So, with that said, I really do look up to him. I do think that it's very interesting that he spent the remaining years of his life after he got out of politics, he spent him afraid that he was going to do something that was going to ruin his reputation. His reputation was very important to him. He was terrified his last few years. One also thing, and I've said it last time, George Washington also invented the mule. And if you don't know, a mule is a female horse and a male donkey, and that's the baby together. So every time I think about this, I always imagine how George Washington pulled that off. I'm imagining George Washington like holding up a male donkey. Anyway, it's a funny thought, but yeah, he's the one that invented it, and that's pretty crazy. One of his greatest ambitions in life was to be a farmer, and he was actually a very good farmer in what he did. Okay, so my third person I look up to is Thomas Jefferson. Thomas Jefferson, man, this guy, he knew his stuff. He was very soft-spoken, but he was a man of many words. In fact, there's a story I heard. He was given his inaugural address, and back then, this is a day before microphones and things like that. So he's in front of Congress, and nobody understood a word that this man said because he was just up there mumbling. And he was a horrible public speaker. He was absolutely horrible. Nobody understood a word he said until they read it the next day in the newspaper, and then they're like, "Oh, wow, that was amazing." But this guy, he was not articulate. He wasn't able to speak well in front of a crowd. But he was amazing at written word. And to top it off, he got even more radical when he saw the French Revolution. When he saw these people fighting for their freedom and standing up to their king, the radical nature of him, it actually grew even more than what it already was. So I really like that about him. He's actually authored so many of my favorite quotes throughout history. I mean, there's a ridiculous amount of quotes that he had. So anyway, with that said, those are my favorite people in history. Angie, I'm gonna read your next question on the next show, so we'll get back to it because we're kind of running over here on time. So again, if you have a question that you'd like to ask on the air, I would be happy to read it off. Feel free. There's so many ways that you can ask your question, and we will answer it live on the air on the next show. So you can call us 619-924-0986. Or you can email us at talk@onthemoveshow.com. You can post your question at facebook.com/onthemoveshow. Or you can tweet us at onthemoveshow. And again, don't forget to use the hashtag AskMack.